Facebook. And we also posted on Twitter. But it occurs to us that we have some listeners who don't any of those things.
People don't use social media? What, I'm sorry. This is another mystery we must look into.
When does this happen, really?
I listen to a number of podcasts, and I don't follow their Facebooks and things like that.
I know. We went with easy routes.
Actually, we utilized this network for the first time this week, and it was thanks to John and Tarkin,
I believe.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah. But we've recently put out a call for experts on pretty much anything.
Anything and everything under the sun.
We pretty much realized that we are okay at some things, but we don't really know very much about anything. So we want to improve our podcast by reaching out to people who are experts in our community who are willing to help us. So if that is you, send us an email at thinkingsidewayspodcast@gmail.com. I will get back to you.
Put expert in the subject line?
You don't have to.
That's a good idea.
Put expert in the subject line.
Somewhere, and we'll get back to you. We'll add you to the list, and we'll email you if we have questions, but we really appreciate it.
And the only caveat that we ask is we usually need a relatively quick turnaround.
Yeah.
So
like a day or two.
You know, if you get your emails and you check them once a week, or you think on it for 6 months, might not be your game.
Yeah. So, but do send us an email.
Yeah.
We'll add you to the list, and we'll probably contact you at some point.
I mean, we already did it.
We've got a huge list already. It's been me. And
we started this, a week and a half ago, and I know I took advantage of it right away.
Yeah. So
we
it's
have
been
a lot
great.
of people writing to us. And by the way, I really could use a demolitions expert also. Somebody who knows how to get rid of dead bodies.
No. So, yeah, send us that email if you send you if you haven't yet. Down at all of our
business in Villisca, which was reportedly very successful. He had started out years before, I think about 1900, working for a guy named Frank Jones, also of Villisca. Joe worked for Frank for 7 years before he left to start his own business. He was the top salesman at Frank Jones's farm business, but he left in 1907, reportedly because he didn't like working from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. 6 days a week.
What?
Yeah,
That's
go figure,
crazy
huh?
town.
I know. Yeah, and when Joe Moore left, he took the John Deere account with him, which apparently didn't endear him to Frank.
Surprise again.
Yeah, that had to be a pretty valuable account.
Oh, I'm sure. It was, John Deere was probably the biggest account in town.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, John Deere's big in the Midwest. And
So
actually,
basically that means that, because usually stores sell certain brands, he was the only store selling John Deere.
yeah, as far as I know, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
I just making sure that's what I understood by taking the account. That's
Yeah.
what that meant.
I don't think John Deere really wanted to have more than one dealership in any given.
Yeah, I
Especially a
understand.
town of that size.
Yeah, and so So I'm sure that was a blow to Frank, although as far as I know, he stayed in business. Frank Jones went on to he was still fairly successful. He became a state senator, although this whole brouhaha with the murders and everything kind of scotched his political career just a little bit later on, but well, we'll talk about that a little later. But yet another reason for Frank Jones to really dislike Joe Moore and hate each other.
Yeah, that's good terms right there.
Yeah, really good terms. And the only reason I bring that up is that if anything unpleasant were to happen to Joe Moore and his family, I'm not saying it would, but if it were to happen, well, Frank might be somebody the police would want to take a look at. But just saying. But more on that later. I should also mention, or at least describe the physical surroundings of the Moore's house. As I've said their address previously, 508 East 2nd Street, which you can see on Google. It's on the eastern outskirts of Villisca. There is some new development to the east, but not a lot. They're really they're kind of on the outskirts of town. And from what I've heard, in 1912, there were a few houses there to the east of them, and that was it. That was the edge of town.
Mm-hmm.
And the house was also on a large lot. It had a barn. There was room for some farm animals, which included at least some horses and some chickens. And I don't know anything else about any other animals, but they apparently did not have a dog. You can guess this because, well,
What happens? Yeah.
if they had had a dog, maybe things would have turned out differently. Who
Yeah,
knows?
probably.
Yeah,
We'd never know
probably.
about this family.
Yeah.
Yeah. And last of all, if you look on Google, you'll note that they are 6 blocks north of the railroad tracks that run through town. Not that has anything to do with anything, but at that time, in 1912, about maybe 30 trains a day passed through the town.
Not nothing.
That's not nothing, and when you're that close to the railroad tracks, well, hey. And lastly, more about the town of Villisca. It's one of those little towns that you think of as people never lock their doors. And, although I have heard in other places that actually most people did lock their doors in Villisca at night. But, I don't know.
Hard to say.
It's really hard to say. And because people wonder about this because they wonder how the killer got into the house, and why did he pick that particular house to begin with?
Right.
That's up in the air too.
Yeah.
So now that I've told you all about the family, I guess it's on to one of you guys. I guess you guys done a little research on this whole thing.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Joe-
didn't know we were doing this, so I didn't prepare. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
No, it
I'm
wasn't.
ready.
It was supposed to be a surprise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about the night before the murders, because there's some stuff that goes down. So that would be Sunday evening, the 9th of June, 1912. The family had gone to the Children's Day service at the Presbyterian Church, which they were members of. And apparently they were accompanied by 2 neighbor children, Lena and Ina Stillinger. I believe that's how you pronounce that. And those girls...
I think it was Ina. Actually.
Ina?
Ina.
Okay. So Lena and Ina, and Lena was 12, Ina was 8, and they had their parents' permission to stay overnight with the Moore children. So what they did is when they went to church, they were going to the end of the year Sunday school program that was called the Children's Day service. And Mrs. Moore, I understood that she was directing it, so never mind, or part of it anyway, so never mind that her children were participating, as were just about every other kid in the church. But she was involved in that way as well. According to accounts, this is what I'm not 100% clear on. It says that everything ended at 9:30, and I don't know if that means that the Children's Day event or service ended, or if that's when they left the church. Because, at those kind of events, people go in, the event happens, and then you stand around and you chit-chat and you catch up with your neighbors. So regardless, though, it always says that they left at 9:30, and at that point they would have walked home, which was not very far. It was about a 5-minute walk, if I remember correctly. It was 3 blocks, so yeah, it was even closer than that. But when they got home, everyone had a small snack before going to bed, cookies and milk.
And martinis.
No martinis for the children.
Well, maybe for the adults.
Maybe for the adults. And again, not entirely clear when they went to bed, but based on the ages of the kids and the time at night, I'm guessing that they were probably all in bed, probably 10:15 or 10:30, somewhere in that range.
Yeah, this was back in the day when there was no internet, no TV. So
and limited lighting. So
they're also children,
that's what I'm getting at. They're 12 and under. They get exhausted pretty
frankly,
quick.
even if you're an adult, what's the point of staying up? I mean, there's just nothing to do.
Yeah.
So you might as well go sack out.
Exactly. But so it's after that, at some point in the night, it's believed past midnight, but we're not 100% positive, that the killer took the axe that was left sitting in the backyard and attacked a family. The next morning, so this is Monday morning, Mary Peckham, who was the neighbor, she's 63, she got up at her normal time of 5 a.m. and started her routine. She said that she noticed the Moore house was surprisingly quiet, which was weird because normally Joe Moore would get up and go take care of the horses in the backyard before going to his office. And Mrs. Moore tended to wake up the kids before sunrise to get them ready and to do their chores. And when you've got 4 kids, they make a fair amount of noise in the morning. So
they'd be out there screaming and throwing rocks at each other.
Or whatever the case may be, playing because they're kids. So there should have been those noises, and none of that was happening. And by 8 o'clock that morning, she hadn't seen any of the family. So what Mary did is she went over to the house and she knocked on the door. Nobody answered. She tried to look through the windows, but they were drawn and shuttered, so she couldn't see anything.
I saw that there were 2 windows in the entire house that didn't have shutters or curtains or anything on the inside, and they had clothes tacked up. Did you also see that?
I don't remember seeing that.
There were, my understanding is that the windows all had clothes tacked up on the inside.
Yeah.
Yeah, clothes, towels, whatever.
Yeah.
It appears that somebody, we don't know who,
Was trying to hide whatever.
maybe covered the windows.
Right.
Yeah.
Or somebody in the family did it for privacy reasons because somebody broke the blinds.
That's possible too.
I know people whose children have pulled the blinds down and they've had to hang a sheet for a couple of days till they get a replacement.
Yeah,
Yeah,
such things do
fair enough.
happen.
Yeah. But anyway, so Mary, she goes over and she looks and she can't see anything. So she goes to the family's chicken coop, lets the chickens out, so at least the chickens can be let out for the day, and goes home. Just figures, well, maybe Joe's family got ill and they had to leave in the middle of the night, and that's why they're not there. She's justifying what's going on, is what she's doing. So after I've read a couple of different versions of how this went down, and in the simple version, one of Joe's employees came over to the house to get his boss, couldn't get into the house, couldn't see anybody, and then left and said something to Mary, and at that point then Mary placed a call to Joe's brother, whose name is Ross Moore. So that's one version that I've heard. I've also heard that unbidden by anybody, for reasons we don't know, Ross just came over on his own to see the family.
Yeah, I don't think that was the case.
I don't think so either, because it does sound like there was, a lot. I mean, people were trying to figure out where's Joe, what's going on. So what happens though is Ross comes over and he does exactly what Mary did. He tries to look through the windows. He can't see anything.
Knocks on the door.
Nobody answers. But of course, he has the one thing that Mary didn't have, which is a key.
Yeah.
So
I thought you were going to say a crowbar.
No. So he unlocks and opens the door.
And he goes inside, where he sees nothing good. So Mary waited on the porch while Ross went into the parlor. He found Ina and Lena's bodies in the bedroom, in the guest bedroom on the bed. So Ross at that point...
And that's on the first floor.
It's on the first floor, yeah. So Ross at this point calls to Mary and says, hey, go get Hank Horton. He was kind of like the police chief. He was the primary peace officer of the town at the time.
Yeah, the town marshal or town watchman or whatever you called him in those days.
Something. The person in charge, basically.
Probably one of those things where it's a kind of you've got a day job also.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So what happens is, Ross finds bodies, so he's, either goes back out or calls to Mary and says, go get Hank.
Mm-hmm.
And then Ross waits, from all the reporting I can see, waits until Hank shows up. And either Mary called her, the details are not clear here on how Hank got
Summoned.
there. Yeah, if she went and ran to get him, or if she called or what, but he was somehow summoned.
I'm gonna guess it was a phone call.
I think they called, yeah.
I would guess that as well, but I don't know where maybe Hank lived 2 doors down, and so she was like,
Maybe.
I'm just gonna run down
That's
there.
a good point.
Anyway, Hank gets back. Hank and Mary and Ross all go into the house, and upstairs they find the entire Moore family had also been bludgeoned to death. I didn't say that Ina and Lena's bodies showed signs of being bludgeoned to death, but there you go.
Yeah, they were.
They'd been bludgeoned to death, and as had the entire Moore family.
Yeah, I don't even think at that initial look, I don't even think they peeked under the covers. I think that's the first person that I've heard of pulled the covers back to see that they were bludgeoned was like the doctor that they brought later on.
There was just a lot of blood.
That was just like, you see
everywhere.
these bodies in the bed, there's blood everywhere. You
know what's happened.
You're not sure if it's bludgeoning or shooting or stabbing or what, but yeah, they look kind of dead.
There's some killing.
Yeah, oh yeah, for sure.
So I've heard a few different ways, but I believe that the axe that had been used in all of the bludgeoning deaths was found in the guest bedroom with Ina and Lena's bodies.
Yeah, that's what I've heard too.
Mm-hmm.
So doctors were obviously called as well, and they examined the bodies and the crime scene, and here's what they found. They concluded that the murders had been committed before 5 a.m., but after midnight, probably closer to midnight, so in the early hours of, the 1-2 hours of the morning, not the later ones.
Mm-hmm.
The creepy factor is, of course, upped when they found 2 cigarette butts in the attic. I'm not totally sure why they were examining the attic in the first place, but they found 2 cigarette butts up there
That would make sense
that
too.
seemed
'Cause
reasonably spent.
Because they'd heard of Hinterkaifeck.